All right. Well, yay me. I finally completed warfare studies. It only took about 133 days. So a little bit of a delay. I think the course was probably estimated to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 working hours. So we put a considerable amount of time uh, on target. So this course that we're getting ready to get into, air and space missions, is only estimated to require 15 hours. So we'll see. So what they don't say is, do they actually estimate how much reading time for all of the documents if you were to read each required reading, and if you were to read um, the additional readings, how much time does that cost? I'd be interested to see. Uh, but maybe we'll see. So it's 9 o'clock right now, Central Standard Time. Lesson one: Command and Control for Air and Space Missions. And this is our first course within the joint um, section of Air Command and Staff College. So, lesson one: Command and Control. The lesson begins. This lesson begins the course's exploration of the five enduring Air Force core missions and the force space operations functions. It examines how these distinct missions emerged and why they are a natural fit for air, space, and cyber capabilities. I remember they used to call it cyberspace, but since now there's an actual space um, function, I guess maybe cyberspace kind of went out of um, fashion. The lesson then focuses on the core mission of command and control. I like command and control. I think command and control, I think AWACS, E3, Sentry. I think your 13, I think they're called 13 Deltas. Um, the ABMers, Air Battle Managers. These are the folks. They're the ones in the air. Then you have your TACPs and your JTACs and all of that other stuff that I still really don't know. Um, what that stuff stands for. I know as a major, I probably should know that, especially as an airfield operations officer. I probably should know that. But hey, I didn't deploy in those environments, so cut me some slack. The lesson then focuses on the core mission of command and control, which underpins all the others. The and air power's linchpin concept of centralized control and decentralized execution, CCDE. Finally, it illustrates how C2 operates in contemporary and expected future problem sets. So, examining current and future. All right, I like that. The contents of this course include the core missions culture, command and control as a concept, C2 of air power and space power, C2 of air power and space power continue. In conclusion, all right, core missions culture. Both airmen and space professionals have a heritage of core missions. In the case of air power, its core missions today can be tied directly back to its mission in World War II. See figure below. As indicated by the table, the United States Air Force five mission sets have gone relatively unchanged for approximately 75 years. The first fundamental axiom of air power has been to gain and maintain control of the air, which enables the entire joint force to operate relatively free from enemy air interference. Additionally, providing intelligence through air surveillance and reconnaissance is vital to any successful military campaign. Airlift has provided rapid resupply of men and material for most of the air power history. The fourth mission set describes the strategic or global nature of air power's reach. If necessary, the United States Air Force can essentially strike anywhere in the world, anytime. Finally, the 1947 core mission of coordination of air defense has morphed into the more broadly applied command and control. With demand for joint air power normally exceeding supply in a large combat operation, along with the fact that different services have their own aviation assets, C2 is absolutely critical to the effective and efficient employment of air power. 1947, air superiority. Today, air and space superiority. 1947, air reconnaissance. Today, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. 1947, airlift. Today, rapid global mobility. 1947, strategic air force. Today, Air Force global strike. 1947, coordination of air defense. Today, command and control. Similarly, from the earliest years of space power, it was obvious space capabilities offered significant advantages to warfighters. Some generally agreed on space mission areas have emerged as a result, but the discussion continues to evolve. They are categorized and labeled differently in different documents. The core competencies in the Space Capstone publication from 2020 do not match the space operations functions in 2018 pre Space Force. Air Force Space Doctrine, which already did not match the space operations and associated capabilities in 2018 Joint Doctrine. The military space power core competencies listed in the SCP are listed below in the SCP Space Capstone publication. Space security, 1. 2. Combat power projection. 3. Space mobility and logistics, or SML. 4. Information mobility. 5. Space domain awareness, or SDA. Most Air Force space operations functions, we will use that as a working term, would be considered by other services as integral to those services, core missions. For example, an airman would agree that the Air Force core mission of global strike does not happen without the space function of positioning, navigation, and timing, or PNT. If anything, the interdependence of the service's missions areas underscores the emerging concept of joint all domain operations, or JADO. This lesson will use the space operations function category to discussion due to their interdependence with other services mission areas. The space operations function codified in AFDP 314 are as follows: space situational awareness, counter space operations, space support to operations, space service support. While the Air Force core missions and space operations functions are not new, technology has continued to reshape how airmen and space professionals conduct them. This lesson examines how the services view their missions, then focuses on the Air Force's foundational core mission of command and control, highlighting contemporary debate in several areas of the subject. Airmen fly, fight, and win across multiple domains of warfare. Space professionals, too, have a multi domain focus. See image below. By integrating air power and space power into joint operations through the five core missions framework, or space operations functions, airmen and space professionals deliver global effects to policymakers and commanders in support of objectives at every level of war. So there's a figure here. I guess it's a chart, and it has cyber in the center. It's like the shape of a four-legged star. It has the electromagnetic spectrum as a horizontal, and it's beneath the cyber. And then beneath the electromagnetic spectrum, you have land on one side and maritime, or sea, on the other side. Beneath land and maritime, you have air. And beneath air, you have space. And now that I think about it, so this is kind of confusing, I'm not going to lie, because um, okay, so understood. Warfighting operational domain relationships. In this graphic, cyber is at the center of it all. So in my mind, being in the center and above everything, cyber would be one of those center of gravities, as it's currently displayed on this graph. So I don't know. The electromagnetic spectrum covers all. It covers land, sea, air, and space. That makes sense. Cyber touches and deals with all of those domains: land, sea, air, and space. The electromagnetic spectrum, I'm not sure how cyber interacts with that. And so this could use some explaining. Honestly, I don't really fully understand. Maybe it should have some sort of okay. So the source of this figure is the AFDP 3-12 cyberspace operations. So I'm guessing that it expounds further upon this, but here where it's used in um, ACSC, it's kind of confusing. In the video below, former Air University Commander Lieutenant General Stephen Quast gives his perspective on the importance of the five core missions and how the Air Force requires current and future airmen to innovatively apply these concepts. So, this General Quast was back in 2016, but he's already talking innovation. So, he was in place when General Goldfein was the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, but I believe that was General Goldfein in 2016. It actually may have been, gosh, I forget the guy that was before General Goldfein. I can see his face. It's a big guy, dark hair. I can't remember his name. Um, but yeah. So, what does General Quast mean by asserting the Air Force core mission rooted in human nature, the way we solve problems? Can you discern the connection he describes? If the world order and structure in place since World War II is waning, is it possible any of the Air Force core missions may become less relevant or necessary? How? So I like that. I like that. General Quad's thoughts on core missions and future environment in 2016. It's a 10-minute video. The required reading materials include AFDP 1. Understanding the uniqueness of how airmen think is foundational to any study of air power. Points to ponder. In your view, is the airman's perspective really unique from other services? How does that unique perspective shape each of the core missions? As you continue in your studies of air power and joint warfare, how this perspective, how this, um, consider how this perspective might benefit planning and execution of joint operations. LeMay Center, AFDP 3-0, Operations and Planning. This was written in 2016 and it's pages 13 through 15. So, not a lot of reading so far. Points to ponder. As you engage in this course and the courses that follow in this series, consider the impact EBAO has not only in each core mission, but across all aspects of air power operations. What is EBAO, you ask? Don't know. I don't know. It's never explained in the paragraph, so you'd have to read it to find out. O'Mara, Clearing the Air Power Theory and Contemporary Air Power, 2010. So a bit of an old reference. Points to ponder. In your view, which of the theorists or thinkers discussed has had the most significant impact upon contemporary air power thought and operations? Why? The author asserts air power makes the best use of the human ability to adapt to a situation. Consider this in light of land and maritime power. Do you agree? Why or why not? Smith, 10 Propositions Regarding Space Power, 2002. So this is 20 years old. So now my question is, okay, we had a 2016 a 2016 video, 6 years old. Okay. LeMay Center AFDP, which was 2021 last year. Then we have operations and planning. I guess LeMay Center is all about doctrine publication. And so the doctrine hasn't been updated for 6 years. That's fine. I'm okay with that. If our doctrine hasn't changed or been updated significantly, we go with what the doctrine says. But when we're using textbooks from 12 years ago and 20 years ago, I just had to stop and just kind of say, maybe we want to update our readings a little bit. Um, Smith, 10 Propositions Regarding Space Power, 2002, read pages 35 through 48. Points to ponder. In your view, is there a case for a distinct space mindedness or space perspective? Why or why not? If so, what key terms might describe it? Venable, more than planes and pickle buttons. Updating the Air Force's core mission of the 21st century. Read pages 1 through 12. No points to ponder on that one, I noticed. Bender, assuring the USAF's core mission in the information age 2016. Read pages 4 through 7. Points to ponder. Do some enduring Air Force core missions make more sense when applied to the cyberspace domain than others? So now, in our introduction, we called it cyber, but in this points to ponder, we call it cyberspace. So my thing would be following a word choice and not using multiple word choice because sometimes we confuse those terms when they're not the same. Which ones? General Bender asserts a top priority for cyberspace is resilience, admitting that some efforts will get through. Some enemy efforts will get through. An airman must learn to operate in contested environments or in contested cyberspace. How does that mindset compare to the air breathing domain? That is a shocking mindset. Most of the environments that we operated in, I just know in the Middle East right now in our conflicts, our services are pretty much uninterrupted. You have internet, you um, have a relatively peaceful environment. Now, that's in the um, Southwest Asia, if you will, the UAEs of the world. But in the Iraqs, back when I last deployed, uh, almost 7 years ago, uh, man, that was almost 8 years ago. Uh, Back when I deployed last, actually, no, when I was in absent, which was about 2 years ago, working as the deputy of airfield ops. Um, that was when Al Assad was struck by missiles by Iran after their general Soleimani was killed. And so uh, those environments, they are dangerous, but they're still not really contested environments. And so today's airman has grown accustomed to that air breathing domain where kind of we can do what we want. We just come in here and we set up shop. You look at Iraq, you look at Afghanistan, and those missions associated with each location. And we've had a pretty uncontested environment. But the next generation or the next conflict is going to be with near peer competitors. It's going to be China. It's going to be um, it's going to be possibly. Now I know they're currently our ally, but if you look at them, they're making moves and kind of straddling the fence. Turkey's probably going to go towards Russia. Just you look at how they took Russia's um, air defense equipment instead of um, using the American equipment, they decided, hey, this Russian equipment, we think it's a little bit better. And that also necessitated the canceling of aircraft sales because we didn't want Russia to be able to calculate and fine tune how their aircraft would interact with um, fifth generation fighters. And that's totally unrelated to what we're specifically talking about, but I've went down on a tangent. So I do that. To learn more, Joint Force Quarterly, an interview with Mark A. Welsh. That was his name, Welsh, General Welsh. So I think General Quast, at the time of his recording in 2016, he would have been the uh, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, I think. Next, command and control as a concept. How are we doing on time here? All right, I'm going to rush through. Command and control is a concept. Never tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity. General George S. Patton. I love it. You give them your vision, don't give them the step by step. I like it. Command and control as a function is as old as organized warfare itself. The DoD Dictionary of Military and Associated Terms defines C2 as the exercise and authority of authority and direction by a properly designated commander over assigned and attached forces in the accomplishment of the mission. The moment forces move beyond shouting distance, commanders have required and relied on the ability to communicate to operate and function effectively. From flags and drums to radios and satellites, as technology has evolved, so too has the ability of commanders to exercise control over their forces. Considering the plenitude and diversity of forces operating around the globe across multiple domains, more than ever, commanders must be able to command and control their forces flexibly and responsively to achieve victory over or on the modern battlefield. There's a picture of an E-3 Golf Sentry AWACS. It patrols the skies over the U.S. on a recent Homeland Defense mission. Um, we know the AWACS bases. One of them is Tyndall. No, not Tyndall. Tinker, I believe, in Oklahoma. Can't remember the other one. Maybe McConnell. Not sure. As one of the seven joint functions, command and control is not a function unique to the Air Force uh, or the control of air assets. Similarly, while command and control is not a space operational function, C2 of global space resources is certainly critical. C2 as a function is executed at all levels across the entire range of military operations. However, while acknowledging the broader perspective, the Air Force frames its core mission of C2 near, or excuse me, around air, space, and cyber systems that enable and support the crucial function. At its core, C2 for air or space relies on the ability to receive, process, evaluate, and disseminate information. The control and dominance of air, space, and cyber domains depends on a modern military's ability to do so efficiently and effectively. From a system centric viewpoint, by recognizing C2 as a core mission, the Air Force highlights the integral and irreplaceable capabilities its C2 systems provide to the entire Joint Force by enabling C2 capabilities. And at my time during AFCENT, um, I noticed that all of the high vis meetings, if you will, they were not on the airfield. They were not on the airframes per se. It was on command and control. There you had the um, the airfield operations right next to your battle managers, if you will, or your C2 folks, and they frequently had meetings um, with the general there, and so it was really big. C2. As noted above, the ability to disseminate information is at the heart of C2. In that regard, it is worth examining joint guidance of its nature. The graphic below from Joint Publication 6-0 Joint Communication System lists the attributes that should be considered when evaluating the quality of specific information. Note that these criteria are not black and white. Instead, we can anticipate that information will vary in degree along a scale from more or less for any given trait. As you will see in the readings that follow, the Air Force explicitly and the Space Force implicitly places a premium on the ability of its systems to provide the best, most accurate information and to process and disseminate it as quickly as possible to enable rapid and reflexive decision making at all levels of war. It's important to keep providing that picture and to push that picture as quick as possible. Uh, Information quality attributes: accuracy, relevance, timeliness, usability, completeness, brevity, security. Information that conveys the true situation is accuracy. Information that applies to the mission task or situations ahead, that's relevancy. Information that is available in time to make decisions, that's timeliness. Information that is understandable and is commonly understood as and is in commonly understood format and displays, that's usability. All necessary information required by the decision maker is completeness. Information that has only the level of detail required, that's brevity. Information that has been afforded adequate protection where required, that's security. C2 is a capability that is easiest to appreciate in its absence. You don't miss what you don't know what you got till it's gone. That's what I think about. Jen Jackson, shout out. There's a tendency to take C2 systems for granted when they're running smoothly. However, when a critical system goes down, the commander's lack of awareness or inability to control forces is felt immediately. It is paramount to secure C2 systems against attack and build resiliency. Given C2's integral importance in modern warfare, this becomes even clearer when we consider the advancement of possi- technology and the move toward Joint All-Domain Command and Control (JADC2). Even more so, when we consider possible conflicts with peer and near-peer adversaries along the increasing effectiveness of anti-access area denial A2AD tactics, the value of C2's preservation becomes inestimable. As you read further, take note of the steps the Air Force and Space Force are taking to address these threats and the ideas that authors have suggested to aid its effort. A big change to Air Force doctrine was codified in the recent 2021 release of AFDP 1. This publication, titled The Air Force, delineates a shift from classic centralized command, decentralized execution mantra to a new focus on mission command. According to AFDP, mission command is an approach to C2 that empowers subordinate decision making for flexibility, initiative, and responsiveness in the accomplishment of the commander's intent. It provides airmen operating in environments of increasing uncertainty, complexity, and rapid change with the freedom of action needed to exploit emerging opportunities and succeed. The new doctrines go on to state that airmen execute mission command through centralized command, distributed control, and decentralized execution. Centralized command is the organizing standard for the effective and efficient means of employing air power. It enables the principle of mass while maintaining the principle of economy of force. So you have the more definite and refined your information is, the more you can fully commit to a task. It should be commanded by a single airman. Because air power's potential to directly affect strategic and operational levels of warfare, it should be commanded by a single airman, the air component commander. Distributed control exploits air power's flexibility and versatility to ensure that it remains responsive, survivable, and sustainable. Decentralized execution is the delegation of authority to achieve an effective span of control, foster disciplined initiative, and empower subordinates to exploit fleeting opportunities. Although the readings in this course will eventually be augmented by articles of the implementation of mission command, you should still examine the current readings closely. Pay particular attention to the challenges that both current and future commanders will face when attempting to balance competing demands in a complex combat environment. That portion should be updated. Um, it just makes it doesn't put things in a positive light. Hey, eventually we're gonna get to updating this information whenever they put out their doctrine or finalize their doctrine. Specifically, technological advances, while they have done much to improve our comparative advantage, have also created significant challenges, as even noted in the doctrine. The temptation of commanders to centrally execute by reaching in with the proverbial thousand-mile screwdriver, oh yeah, will only increase. As you read on, cover this temptation and the many reasons doctrine and military scholars alike urge commanders to exercise caution when faced with the ever increasing ability to micromanage execution decisions. Note that a great deal of C2 of space operations will be covered in the Joint 601 Joint Fundamentals course. LeMay Center, AFDP 1, the Air Force 2021, pages 12 through 14. I feel like that was already listed. Maybe it was 8 through 11, not sure. Deptula, a new era for command and control of aerospace operations. Dosauer, Peeling the Onion, pages 24 through 41. And yes, there are points to ponder um, for this, but in the interest of time, we're kind of speed through. You have to see yourself. Saunders, Beyond Borders, PLA, Command and Control of Overseas Cyber Operations, 2020. Read them all. To learn more, Leonard, A Concept for Command and Control, 2010, 157 through 169. Next. C2 of air power and space power. The command and control of both air power and space power is governed by one of its most significant characteristics, the dichotomy between the scarcity of air and space assets and the potential for operations involving these assets to achieve efficiency and effectiveness. Generally, the need for air power and space power effects will always outpace the availability of either. In the case of air power, while demand for tactical effects is high, it can achieve direct operational and strategic effects even in a single strike. Achieving a balance between these competing interests requires the expertise and perspectives that airmen and space professionals must provide. The Commander Air Force Forces, or COMAFOR. When Air Force forces are assigned or attached to a joint force, the senior ranking airman will be designated as the Commander, Air Force Forces, comma 4. The comma 4 provides a single face to the JFC for all Air Force matters. The centralized command of Air Force services or service issues start over. The centralized command of Air Force service issues provides the joint force the best opportunity to maximize both the efficiency and effectiveness of air power in support of the joint force commander's mission. Chain of command. You have a chart. I'm pretty sure I saw this chart in Hapsin. You have on the left side, you have the administrative branch, and they call that ADCON, administrative control. You have their responsibilities to prepare the forces. Then you have on the right side, you have the operational branch, which is COCOM, OPCON, TACON, and support. So COCOM, combatant commander, OPCON, operational control, and TACON, tactical control. So we're talking tactical, operational. The third level is strategic, but I didn't see anything about strategic here. So interesting. And their role, the role of the operational branch, is to employ forces. So one, the admin side prepares the forces. The operational side employs the forces. At the top of the chain of command, you have the president. Next, you have the SecDef. Following that, you have the secretary. It splits into two. You have the secretary of the Air Force and the combatant commander. Then you have the chief of staff of the Air Force below the secretary of the Air Force. And this is all on uh, the chart is one that you'll really want to look at because it's kind of confusing. Not gonna lie. You have President of the United States, SecDef, Secretary of the Air Force, Chief of Staff of the Air Force. They're all one color. I could see why the first three would be the same color because they're all civilian. But why is the Chief of Staff of the Air Force the same color when that member is military? I don't fully have a grasp on that. But again, this is from AFDP 3-30. I'm sure if you read that, oh, image is no longer in publication, but it remains in line with doctrine. So you can't read AFDP 3-30 because the image is no longer there. But it still is an accurate depiction of the chain of command. Um, then underneath the combatant commander, you have sub unified combatant commander and joint task force commander. Um, and then there's three legs under the combatant commander. The third leg is the Air Force Service Component Commander. And adjacent to that individual is the comma 4. Then you have another leg to the left that's below the sub-unified combatant commander is the Air Force Service Component Commander, and the wing commanders are below those individuals. And then you have the Air Force Service Component Commander, and they have wing commanders underneath them. And then you have the Joint Task Force Commander, which has the ATIF Commander, the Air Expeditionary Task Force Commander underneath them. And then you have your deployed wing commanders, your AEW, Air Expeditionary Wing Commanders. And so the Joint Task Force Commander is in charge of all of those expeditionary folks. This arrangement, underpinned by the tenet of centralized control and decentralized execution, supports the principles of war, simplicity, and unity of command. C2 and Space Forces work somewhat differently. Being global in nature and capability, space resources satellites are not assigned or attached to a JFAC in the theater. JFAC is JFC. However, certain personnel, such as space support teams, might be. There will be no comm space for since there is no USSF service component to a JFAC. Rather, there is one standing functional component commander for space, the JFSCC or CFSCC, who falls under the combatant commander of the United States Space Command, i.e., a joint force commander. U.S. Spacecom is the only command with a space component, thus maintaining centralized control of global space assets under the combatant commander who is always responsible for them. And so here is a very, very nice, um, I guess this is a chain of command. The only problem is it doesn't have the president on it. I guess we're just assuming that the president is in charge. but it makes it almost look like the space warfighting architecture is solely run by the Secretary of Defense. Currently, it is um, it has on the same level on this chart. It has the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of the Air Force. The Secretary of Defense, I'm guessing, is it should be on its own level because it doesn't necessarily have anything underneath it. But to the sides you have on the right side, it's the Air Force, which is blue, which makes sense. Then you have the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is purple. Then underneath the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, you have the United States Space Command. You have the United States Space Force Space Operations Command, United States Air Force First Air Force. You have United States Marine Force Space. You have United States Navy Space Command. You have United States Army Space and Missile Defense Command. And so everything that has some sort of thing to do with space in its name is falling under the United States Space Command, which makes sense. Then on the Secretary of the Air Force side, you have the Chief of Space Operations, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Then underneath that, you have Space Operations Command, Space Systems Command, Space Training and Readiness Command. And I anticipate that as time goes forward, you're going to have a lot of these things that are currently set up under the Air Force, because what you have now is you have a slow peeling away. It was kind of like a major split, and now they're kind of pulling and picking and pulling all of the other space components from the Air Force and moving them over to the Space Force. And I suspect that this is mostly surrounding just the way the money is aligned. Each sister service will have a service commander similar to the Commodore, but the Commodore tends to centralize control of air power more than the other service component commanders due to the typically high demand of limited Air Force assets in a major conventional operation. Since it tends to be more difficult for a three-star corps commander of a two-star division commander to centrally control soldiers and Marines down to the company level, these services tend to push tactical command and control down to lower echelons. The Navy brings a culture of delegating authority to its commanders at sea and typically provides individual carrier strike group commanders with a large amount of delegated authority. The Common 4 is delegated administrative control, ADCON, and operational control, OPCON, over assigned and attached Air Force forces to ensure forces are properly organized, trained, and equipped to support JFAC operational requirements. The Air Force's senior airmen, the Common 4, should normally be designated at a command level above the operating force and serve as the supported or supporting commander for missions shown in the activity below. Supported versus supporting missions. Click the tabs to the left for information on the supported and supported missions performed by the Common 4. The Common 4 has, or as the supported commander. Click it. It says the Common 4 as the supported commander: strategic attack, counter air, counter land, counter sea, space control, air mobility, information operations, theater airborne, ISR. The Common 4 as the supporting commander. The Common 4 as the supporting commander: close air support, air interdiction, maritime support. A note on mission overlap. There is an apparent overlap between counter land as a supported mission and AI and CAS as supporting. For supported counter land mission, doctrine is referring to the JFAC's overall air interdiction effort. Supporting air interdiction and close air support missions occur in supported commanders AO. Command relationships. This is long. This is a lot. I probably should have read through this. This is a lot. This will be a two-part video. Yeah. This will be a two-part video. Let's see how long this is going. 40 minutes. All right. We'll finish this and we'll stop. Command relationships. It is important to understand the various authorities and controls commanders use and rely on. After all, the first C in C2 is command. Combatant command, the non-transferable command authority delegated by the President of the United States to the combatant commander. Combatant commander, the individual at the head of a geographical functional combatant command to fulfill duties and execute missions assigned to the combatant command, which is the organization. Of all our joint terminology, these may be the most misused phrases. The distinction is subtle but important. Combatant command refers to the organization itself. Combatant commander to its commander. Who gets that confused? But okay. The Joint Force Air Combat Commander or Air Component Commander, the JFAC, is as a component commander is subordinate to the combatant commander, but derives the authority to plan, task, and control forces from the overall COCOM. The JFAC should be the service component commander with a preponderance of forces to be tasked. Below this level, within their organizations, commanders may execute operational control, tactical control, and administrative control. How and when these command authorities are applied varies at all levels of command. A full description is provided in AFDP 3-30 Command and Control. Beyond the roles and responsibilities shown in the supporting missions displayed above, the JFAC may delegate responsibilities to the JFAC, such as Airspace Control Authority (ACA), Area Air Defense Commander (AADC), and Electronic Warfare Control Authority. ACA, the Airspace Control Authority, is the commander's designated to assume overall responsibility for the operation of airspace control system in the airspace control area. Joint Publication 3-52, Joint Airspace Control. AADC, Area Air Defense Commander, is responsible for the overall theater defensive counter air effort. SCA, Space Coordinating Authority, is the authority to plan, integrate, and coordinate space operations involving forces of two or more military departments, functional components, or two or more forces of the same service. Of note, the concept of SCA may be changing or going away with the publication of the SCP. So the SCP is still pending. The EWCA, the Electronic Warfare Control Authority, the senior electronic attack authority in the operating area, develops guidance and performing EA on behalf of the JFC. All right, we'll end it there and we'll go to part two. Take a break. I need some water. We'll see.